You thought the ranting was over? You don't know GT. Here we are again. Last time, the insane level of confusing plot points was such that I barely got more than halfway through an episode. I'm pretty sure we'll get farther this time, but you know what? There's still a lot of crazy from here on out. Trunks arrives to the Son home, beaten and bloodied, and has just enough strength left to mumble out number 17's name before passing out. That's when everyone else notices that little old portal to hell. At that moment, Kaio telepathically reaches out to Goku from his planet to let him know that this is in fact a portal to hell, that the two worlds have become stuck together. And this is delivered alongside a really weird, really random addition to the story. Did you notice it? Kaio has a cold. Have we ever seen him have a cold before? How does a god get sick? Are the germs dead too? It's nice to see he has some sort of life hinted at outside training Goku or delivering otherworldly messages to him. But it's clear the writers didn't think this through. It has nothing to do with the story, it never really comes up again, it's weird and distracting, and hey, wait a minute! Kaio's planet is back! Right, that's the weird thing that doesn't make any sense. Not the cold thing. Yeah, without any explanation, Kaio's planet has returned. Where did this come from? It's not as if GT hasn't shown Kaio before. He's definitely not on his planet in episode 1. He's just been completely rebooted, I guess. Yeah, turns out Dragon Ball Super wasn't the first Dragon Ball property to do this. And that's also because Battle of Gods was under the Dragon Ball Z branding. Things are getting bad everywhere. The people of Earth are noticing the scary things. The king is making an address about it. Mr. Satan is trying to run away. Dr. Gero and Dr. Mew use the big grabby arm things they built, something else I guess you have the time and materials and lack of supervision in hell to make, to drop all the ogres on Earth. They congratulate themselves on having completed the first stage of their plan, attaching the two worlds. Dr. Gero exposits a lot of the stuff I complained about last time, so I won't get into it again. What's interesting, though, is that Dr. Mew seems far more focused on specifically killing Goku than Dr. Gero does. Dr. Gero is more interested in punishing humanity as a whole. Given that both of them have legitimate grievances with Goku, I'm not saying I think it's unreasonable for one to feel more strongly about it than the other. I just find it kind of interesting given that Dr. Gero dead son backstory I'm so very certain Toriyama hadn't come up with in the 90s. It's a bit harder for me to imagine Dr. Gero being so blasé about this if he's truly always been motivated by Goku killing his child. Then again, it's not as if that's the reason this arc doesn't work. When Trunks finally wakes up, the heroes seem far more excited about what has beaten Trunks up than worried for his or their safety. I mean, Goku can be kinda waku about everything, but everyone looks delighted about this. It's really weird. Trunks explains what happened to him. He's rich and powerful, so he was having his driver, his valet, take him to Goku's house for chicken fried toad when suddenly number 17 smashed into the car. It's a small thing, but I do at least appreciate that Trunks prioritizes his driver's safety during all of this. I don't know what happens to the driver afterwards, since he never shows up at Goku's house, but, well, it's a start. Trunks doesn't seem to have ever met number 17. Before someone mentions Dragon Ball Super in the comments, doesn't exist yet. Trunks doesn't seem to have ever met number 17, but says he recognizes number 17 because he has the same key as number 18. Now, we all should know, assuming we've read Dragon Ball, that number 17 and number 18, like all the artificial humans except for Cell, don't have ki. This is a mistake. But like having bodies in hell, it's not a huge deal. In this case, it's not even a necessary twisting of logic to facilitate a story that otherwise couldn't be told. It's just a little mistake. Whatever. I've always found it weird that number 17 and number 18 don't have ki, especially if Cell does, given that, as I said last time, they're not robots, but cyborgs. They're just people that are augmented. Whatever. It's still one more trinket on the pile-up of nonsense. Anyway, number 17 beats up on Trunks and tells him to deliver a message to Goku. Everyone Son Goku killed will be coming back to life. If he has the courage to fight, come to hell alone. The characters see the resurrected villains on TV, which gets Goku all waku waku. He does say, though, that with all the baddies spread out, there's no way to defend against them. That makes no sense. You have multiple people. You can split up. And that's exactly what happens. I don't know why they wrote this line. We don't need Goku making up the battle strategies. Just head on over to hell and stay out of our way. Bluma does worry about the possibility of Freeza and Cell coming back. But as far as Goku is concerned, that's not a bug, that's a feature. What we get next is a sequence of characters like Goten and Trunks and Pan fighting off various villains. This continues into the next episode with other characters. The return of so many past villains is one of the major fan service angles of this arc. Now, I need to get into something here. There's a tweet I made long ago when I was watching Dragon Ball GT all the way through for the first time, comparing it to Dragon Ball Super. I said, if Dragon Ball GT is a man blindly groping in the dark, trying to find his car, grabbing any hopeful thing he can lay his hands on, stepping in every pile of dog crap along the way, Dragon Ball Super is that car stuck in the mud, spinning its wheels, going nowhere. What I meant with that post was to point out the different directions of the two Dragon Ball spin-offs, particularly contrasting how I think they screw up. Dragon Ball Super to me has largely been content to be reheated Dragon Ball Z. It wants to be as much like that as possible. It wants to be liked. It wants to cash in on that familiar iconography. It wants to toss out lots of member berries. Even more than 10 years after the revival era began, we still can't even get out of the original story's time frame. Dragon Ball GT, for all its faults, and there are many, tries at least a bit harder to be its own thing. It'll screw up a lot, but it will try everything. Even when it ran away screaming from its own initial premise back to safer Dragon Ball Z-esque territory, it still felt like the Dragon Ball story was moving forward. While in general principle I prefer GT's approach, that doesn't necessarily mean one is inherently better or worse than the other. The same reason I lament Super playing it safe is probably the same reason other people feel it hits the mark of what they want from Dragon Ball, and why GT is a failed oddity. I only bring it up here because this is where I feel GT dives head first into the same kind of nostalgia bait trap that Super often does. And even compared to Super, this is just empty, shallow, and largely meaningless. I will give it credit. I'm surprised at some of the baddies they dust off. I mean, Black and Blue have some of the biggest roles in this sequence, although that's not saying much. Just like with Superhero, every time I start to think that Dragon Ball only remembers the Red Ribbon Army in relation to the Cell arc, they surprise me. Of course, the benefit to using Blue is that they already have his voice actor on standby. Piccolo's Furukawa Toshio cut his teeth on Dragon Ball by playing Blue. And Piccolo does have a role in this arc, so it had to be easy to get him to reprise Blue. I admit I was a little bit worried though, given that the last time we saw Blue in the 10th anniversary movie, he had been recast with Shimada Bin. But no, it is indeed Furukawa playing the original General Blue. Sato Masaharu is likewise reprising his role as Black, so at least in this case the fan service is done with the slightest degree of care. Unfortunately, then you get characters like Pui Pui, Number 19, and Yakan, who have almost no role at all, although I don't know what you do with them. They don't even really have any lines. Shockingly, Yakan's original voice actor returns to make grunts. The other two don't. In fact, Pui Pui is now voiced by Giru's voice actor, Satoshi Shinobu. But, you know, they're here for the greatest hits. You liked that part where Number 19's head gets blown off? Well, now we can see that again! Isn't that fun? To see the exact same thing we saw 6 years ago? Only now without any degree of drama? To me, though, the biggest disappointment is the return of Nappa. It really seems like GT wants to do an ironic callback with this because who should end up confronting Nappa other than Vegeta? What a fascinating idea! Vegeta meets one of the ghosts of his past. Nappa's from a time when Vegeta was a much different person, a representation of the evil Vegeta once was. But at the same time, Vegeta betrayed Nappa, demonstrating himself to be far more ruthless than Nappa. Vegeta benefited from so many, frankly undeserved, chances at redemption. But Nappa's chance was taken from him, arguably by Vegeta. There's a juicy hypocrisy in Vegeta now having to stop Nappa's destruction. Nappa should be shocked by what Vegeta's become. There are so many cool things you could do with that premise, and Dragon Ball GT does exactly none of them. Nappa does his two-finger blast to destroy an area. Remember that? Do you remember? Do you remember when he did that back in 1989? Remember that? Then Vegeta shows up and kills him. Nappa has no lines during this exchange. He just grunts. He does at least speak when he returns to Hell. He's played by Rild's performer now because Rild is back to fight Gohan for a little bit. It's just so disappointing. This story struggles to be about anything. What's disappointing in the macro sense is that all of this feels rather redundant. Remember the 12th Dragon Ball Z movie, Fusion Reborn, Goku and Vegeta? We've already had the denizens of Hell invade Earth before, only it wasn't done just to dust off old bad guys. It was to have fun with a brand new concept. The Dragon Ball Z movies already typically feel like reheated versions of the series. When your series feels like a reheated version of a reheated version, you know you're in trouble. Goku heads into Hell only for the villains to hop into the portal and for the portal to disappear, trapping Goku there. That's stage 2 of the plan, Operation Seal Up Goku. Goku is furious, believing they tricked him into thinking he'd get to fight Freeza and Cell. Actually, nobody tricked you, Goku. The villains never lured you here with promises of Frieza and Cell. They, in fact, never said a single word about Frieza and Cell. That was Bluma. Well, good thing the heroes, the villains, and the writers happen to be in sync with each other, because here are Frieza and Cell just waiting for Goku after all. They're the main two draws of this little nostalgia wank fest, both with their original voice actors. Good for GT for at least managing that. Of course, this is also where the infamous Doga Kobo episode appears. You might remember from when we covered the Cell arc in DBD TV that the Doga Kobo studio supervised exactly one episode of Dragon Ball Z. Well, they're back for Dragon Ball GT, and this is probably their most infamous episode. It looks very different. But you know what? I don't hate it. Frieza looks pretty cool. I actually think I could get used to these designs. Well, with one exception. Cell, I don't know what happened here. It looks like someone stretched out his eyes, or he's perpetually surprised. I think we have another Sal for the old scrapbook. But just like evil people escaping from Hell, it feels like we've been here before. I mentioned last time we already did a thing where Goku has to fight Frieza and Cell in Hell. Why do we need to do this again? Why do we want to do this again? And you know what? This is so unoriginal, so reminiscent of that previous scenario, that I honestly forgot that Cell has an actual connection to Dr. Gero that might justify his being here. They never interact a single time in the Cell arc, but there is that moment where Cell implies he might be one of the few creations who actually reveres his creator. You could do something with that, dig into a relationship we've never seen before. But no. Cell's not here because of Dr. Gero. Cell's here because, wow, look, aren't Frieza and Cell popular? Remember them? Isn't it so cool to see them again? Remember when the top half of Cell's body got blown up? Remember when Frieza got cut in half by his own discs? Remember? This whole section just leaves me feeling very, very little. The coolest part of this fight is when Goku rides on Frieza's disc like it's a Kintone and grabs a stalagmite to use as a Nyoibo. It's literally the only good thing in the entire episode. Is it member-berry fan service? Yes. But at least it's done in a way that's marginally creative by comparison. That's how low the bar is here. This is all I have to grab onto. It's my only lifeline. Frieza and Cell have a little more at their disposal than reliving their old failures. They have a new move. When a portal's stuck in your neighborhood, Who can you blame? Hell's Buster! Yeah, that's a name. Hey, as long as we're here, Vegeta has a new attack this story arc. Final Shine. Ugh, it sounds like a store-brand furniture polish. It doesn't even have a cool hand gesture. Anyway, Hell's Buster. Hell's Buster is a very special martial arts ability that clearly requires lots of intense training because it's a technique that puts Goku into worse hell. You know, that's a thing that martial arts does. This may come as a shock to you, but this is starting to break me just a little bit. So let's recap. We're ripping off the Ano Yoichi Budokai arc, we're ripping off Dragon Ball Z Movie 12, and now we're ripping off Sugaroku Space from the end of the last story arc. There's an old lady and she tortures Goku in hell scenarios. And I guess it's kinda cute. I like getting to see more of hell, diving into mythology in an irreverent Dragon Ball way. But we already did the weird dimension thing as a pointless tangent. We just did it! We just did it! Anyway, there's an ice machine, it's special hell ice, and it freezes Goku, and Freeza and Cell think they've won, but Goku breaks out of the special hell ice because the lady thought that Goku was dead, and special hell ice is only for dead people. You see, the ice is getting too hot because living people have a higher body temperature than dead people, and I mean, I kinda get that logic, but, you know, regular ice can freeze living people, so, why is the special hell ice less effective than regular ice? So anyway, Goku freezes Frieza and Cell with the special hell ice. Frieza, Cell, freezes hell. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Well, it rhymes in English. Then Goku tips them over and shatters them into tiny pieces. Okay. So since we're on the subject, what the hell is with these hell people? I could have sworn the Boo arc established that if you die when you're dead, you just cease to exist. But Frieza and Cell brag that they're immortal because they're already dead, but I guess they're not immortal because Goku can tip them over and shatter them, and that defeats them even though Frieza got cut in half earlier, but then later we see them in a cage and they're fine, so are they immortal? I guess technically they say they're immortal in hell, so maybe if they're not in hell they wouldn't be immortal. Is that why all the other bad guys can be killed? But Frieza and Cell seem like they were just as killed. They all end up back in hell anyway, so there doesn't really seem to be any difference. Number 17 says the bad guys have come back to life, so maybe he means that literally rather than it being a figurative reference to their escape from hell. Does that mean that Frieza and Cell literally came back to life too? But if they came back to life like regular people, then why are they immortal? Goku's in hell, and he's alive, but he's not immortal, and we know Frieza and Cell can't be alive because the special hell ice works on them when it doesn't work on Goku, who is very much alive. So why would all the other bad guys come back to life but Frieza and Cell don't? Is the act of leaving hell all it takes to be alive? A dead Goku returned to Earth and that didn't make him alive? None of the bad guys have halos, even though we've seen people in hell have halos. Maybe that's indicative of them actually being alive now. But Dr. Gero and Dr. Mew didn't have halos either, even before this plan started, and they were very much dead. Later in this arc, Piccolo is banished from heaven to hell, and when that happens, he loses his halo. So maybe only people in heaven have halos, even though that's not consistent with how it's worked in the past. So that means the bad guys on Earth didn't come back to life, but then when they're defeated, Blue and Black do have halos. I guess that's because they haven't been rejudged to go back to hell yet, but they haven't been cleared for heaven either. So dead people have halos regardless of whether or not they've been cleared for heaven, just as long as they're not in hell? Okay, let's come at this from a different angle. Remember how number 16 never comes back? Presumably it's because he's a robot, so he doesn't have a soul. Dr. Gero died as a brain in a robot body, but he's a guy. Given that Mew is a machine mutant, I'm willing to believe he's a mutated guy. I'm fine with them being in the afterlife. I guess Saibai men have souls? I can certainly accept everybody having their same clothes, and I can accept that they exist in hell as they died, so that Dr. Gero appears as artificial human number 20. Actually, though, Frieza died as a cyborg too, and we've always kind of ignored that. I guess we're accepting they exist in hell as their most marketable, recognizable forms. Fine. That's all fine. But, number 19 is a robot, and he comes back here. So does Sergeant Metallic. Did he even die? I mean, his batteries died, but those can be replaced. Well, this is the animated continuity where Muscle Tower was destroyed at the end, so maybe he did die, but he's still a robot. And I wish I could say that's the weirdest non-living aspect of this whole thing, but Blue has a plane. He flies a plane out of hell. Did the plane die? Does the plane have a soul? Was the plane evil? Blue didn't die with a plane, and don't tell me it's a plane they built in hell. Yellow has his plane that's clearly the same plane he was flying when he was killed. Black has his robot suit from when he died. Why does the robot suit go to hell? I don't know if I can handle much more of this, but there's one more thing, and I'm just going to try to push through it. I made a joke about it last year, but I didn't stop to think I'd be dealing with so much at once here. So, Kula, the movie villain, I guess, exists in this continuity. I think. I mean, we see him. We see a still photo of him on the news, so he exists. But that's the only time we see him. He doesn't have a vignette or appearance beyond that. We never see him get defeated. He's never mentioned. And it's not like they didn't already have Kula's voice actor hanging around if they wanted to incorporate him into the story. So maybe it's just for the sake of my own sanity, but I do find it a bit easier to believe that maybe this was just someone not really thinking things through, rather than an explicit attempt to put Dragon Ball Z Movie 5 into the series continuity. Something Daisenshu 6. I really don't care. It has absolutely no impact on the story, and there's enough here to talk about that does. I mean, it's comparatively easy to try to put it in. It still doesn't really work, but it's easier. This could have been worse. It could have been like Tullece or something. Honestly, I would have just quit watching this series entirely if we bottomed out at Plan to eradicate the science video game logic. Come to think of it, GT has already repurposed that game for the baby arc. They are kinda doing the Ghost Warrior thing here. I just can't handle much more. I'm honestly starting to feel dizzy writing this script. I'm not kidding. I'm being totally serious here. I am legitimately getting dizzy trying to wrap my head around every single thing about these few episodes that doesn't make sense. I even split it up into 2 videos and it's still too much for my little psyche. I'm fragile. I'm delicate. You can't put me through all this. And here's me coming back to continue writing this the next day. I actually had to go back to the parts you just listened to and add more aspects that I'd forgotten to put in the first time. So that's it. That's it. This has to be a full video by now, right? I think I finally covered everything in this arc aside from the actual number 17 stuff, so I can finally move on. If I ever needed your Genki to help me through these challenges, it's right now. And of course, Genki comes in many forms. I know that GT is not as mainstream or popular as other forms of Dragon Ball, even when it's so much fun to listen to me have a mental breakdown. So please engage with this video. Please comment, please like it if you like it, please share it with your friends. And of course, I always so greatly appreciate the Genki from my generous patrons. And if you loved me saying Genki over and over again, you're going to love Nakama coming up in the next video. They do not shut up about it. Anyway, I'll see you next time.